I still remember the smell of roses that morning, not the kind you buy for love, but the kind you buy when you're trying to remember what love used to feel like. They sat in a crystal vase on our kitchen island, bright, red, perfect. I had gotten them for Emily the night before. I'd written a small note to go with them. It said, "For the woman I still believe in." When I woke up that morning, I thought the roses would make her smile. Instead, they watched her pack her things. She was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that feels like a storm already passed, and all that's left are broken branches. Her suitcase was open on the bed. Her hands moved quietly, folding shirts like she'd been preparing for this for weeks. I asked, my voice cracking in the middle. "What's going on?" She didn't look at me, just zipped her bag. "Mark, we need to talk." I don't remember sitting down. I just remember the sound of my heartbeat in my ears, that dull pounding when something is about to fall apart. She stood across from me, hands trembling. Then she said it. "Mark, I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore." It didn't register at first. Leaving? I laughed nervously. "You mean for a few days, to your sisters, or?" She shook her head. "No. I means leaving you." My throat went dry. "There's someone else, isn't there?" She looked down. That silence told me everything. It felt like the air left the room. You always hear people say heartbreak feels like drowning, but it's not. It's worse. It's like you're still breathing, but every breath burns. I managed to whisper, "Who is he?" She hesitated, then softly, almost like she pitied me, she said, "Ethan." The name hit me harder than I thought. Ethan, the guy from her office, the one who always seemed a little too helpful, the one I once thanked for driving her home after a late meeting. I wanted to shout, to throw something, but I just couldn't. Instead, I nodded, slow. "Robotics, how long?" She exhaled. "A few months." My hands clenched. "And you were just going to, what, walk out, just like that?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't plan this, Mark. It just happened. You stopped noticing me. You were always working, always tired." That's when something inside me cracked. "Don't you dare," I said, voice trembling, "make your cheating about my effort." She broke down crying, but all I could feel was this, hollow quiet inside. Not anger, just an empty ache. We didn't say much after that. She finished packing, whispering apologies that felt rehearsed. When she turned to leave, I said something I don't even remember thinking. It just came out. "Does he make you happy?" She froze at the doorway. For a long time, she didn't answer. Then, "He makes me feel alive." And that was it. That was the knife. After she left, the house felt like a museum of our life. The coffee mug she used every morning still sat on the counter, her slippers by the couch, the smell of her shampoo in the bathroom, and those roses still standing on the island, petals glowing in the morning light. For a moment, I thought about throwing them away, but I didn't. I just stood there, watching them die a little each day. Days blurred into nights. People say time heals, but in those first few weeks, time felt like the enemy. Every tick of the clock reminded me she wasn't coming back. I stopped answering calls, stopped shaving. Even my dog, Riley, seemed confused, waiting by the door every evening, expecting her footsteps. One night, I sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey and asked myself the same question over and over. When did I lose her? Was it when I missed her birthday dinner because of work? Was it when we stopped holding hands in bed? Or was it the night she stopped saying, "I love you," and I pretended not to notice? I checked her social media once, just once. There she was, smiling, hair windblown, holding a coffee cup I'd bought her last Christmas. And beside her, Ethan, his arm around her, her eyes full of that alive she talked about. That's when I knew she wasn't coming back, but I wasn't going to let her take what was left of me, so I started writing. Not to her, at least not at first, just to myself. Every night I'd sit at the kitchen table, the same one where she'd once laughed, once loved, and I'd write everything I never said. The pain, the anger, the confusion. Eventually, those words began to form something else, a letter. A letter not of revenge, but of truth, because sometimes the only way to heal is to let the truth speak louder than the heartbreak. The night before our anniversary, I lit a candle beside those fading roses. Their petals had turned dark, almost black around the edges. That's when I finally knew what I needed to do. I wrote her one last note, folded it neatly, placed it beside the vase, the same spot she used to leave her coffee cup every morning. It began with, "Emily, if you ever come back, read this first." And somehow I knew she would. It's strange how silence changes shape when someone's gone. The first week after Emily left, it was deafening, like the air itself refused to move. By the second week, it softened, became background noise. By the third, it felt almost normal, like my house had forgotten her before I did. But I hadn't. I couldn't. I went back to work, tried to keep my head down. My coworkers looked at me like I was glass, fragile, ready to shatter. One morning, my boss said, "You should take some time off, Mark." I nodded, but what I wanted to say was, time off from what? From breathing, from remembering. Instead, I said, I'm fine. And I wasn't, not even close. Nights were the hardest. You don't realize how many little sounds belong to someone until they're gone. The way she used to hum while brushing her teeth, the shuffle of her slippers down the hallway, the quiet click of her phone charging on the nightstand. Now all I heard was the hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of wind against the windows. That, and the occasional vibration of my phone, texts from friends checking in, or from numbers I didn't want to see. Her number still sat pinned at the top of my messages, like a wound that refused to close. One night, curiosity betrayed me. I clicked on her profile again, a new post, her and Ethan at a vineyard, smiling, laughing. His hand on her waist, her head tilted just right, the pose she used to do when I took her picture. The caption read, "Sometimes you find love when you stop pretending to be happy." I stared at that line until my vision blurred. Then I put my phone down and laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that didn't feel like mine. "Pretending to be happy," I whispered. "That's rich." Because if she'd ever bothered to ask, she would have known I was pretending too. Not out of deceit, but out of love. Because sometimes love is pretending, pretending it's not hard, pretending it'll be okay, pretending it's still worth fighting for. A few weeks later, I ran into someone who changed the tone of my grief. Her name was Claire, a neighbor, recently divorced. She stopped by to return a toolbox Emily had borrowed months ago. When I opened the door, she gave me that look, the one people give when they've heard the gossip. "I heard about you and Emily," she said softly. "I'm sorry." I just nodded. She hesitated, then said something unexpected. "I saw her the other day, with him." My stomach tightened. "Where?" "Downtown." She looked happy, but tired. You know, that kind of tired you can't hide even when you're smiling. I didn't answer, but her words stuck in my head like splinters. Happy but tired. That night I found myself driving no destination, just the hum of the road under my tires and the ghost of her perfume in my memory. Eventually, I ended up near the restaurant we used to go to on Fridays, Harper's, a small Italian place with dim lights and quiet jazz. And there they were. Through the glass window, I saw Emily and Ethan at our old table. She was laughing, that light, melodic laugh that used to pull me out of bad days. But when she turned her face slightly, I saw something else, a flicker. A quick hollow glance down at her phone, like she was somewhere else, even while smiling. I didn't go inside, didn't make a scene. I just watched for a moment, then drove home. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I just felt sorry for her. The next few months changed me. I started running in the mornings. At first, it was just to tire myself out, to outrun the thoughts. But after a while, it felt like healing. Each step a little less pain, each breath a little more peace. I began reading again, books I'd abandoned years ago. Started cooking, learning to make my own meals instead of microwaving leftovers. Even painted the living room a new color, something bright, warm. Every small thing I did was like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd forgotten existed. But still, every night before bed, I'd glance at that letter on the counter. The one under the wilted roses, now just dried petals in a vase. I never moved it, because some part of me still believed she'd come back to read it. Then one evening, almost 4 months after she left, it happened. A text. "From Emily, can we talk?" My chest tightened, my fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed to ignore it, but the heart doesn't always listen to logic, so I replied, "About what?" Minutes passed, then her response came. "I made a mistake." We met the next day at a park, the one near the lake where we used to walk Riley. She looked different, thinner, tired, the light in her eyes dimmed. When she saw me, she tried to smile, but it faltered halfway. "Hi," she whispered. I nodded. "Hi." For a moment we just stood there, staring at the water. Then she said it, the words I'd replayed in 1,000 imaginary versions, but never thought I'd actually hear. "Ethan's gone," she said. He cheated on me." Silence, just the sound of ducks gliding across the lake and the faint breeze between us. I wanted to feel vindicated, to say, "Now you know how it feels," but instead I felt nothing. Just a quiet sadness, not for what she'd done, but for how far she'd fallen. She looked at me, tears trembling in her eyes. "I deserve this, don't I?" I shook my head slowly. "No one deserves that, Emily." She wiped her eyes. "He said I was too much, too emotional, that I never made him feel wanted enough. I kept trying to prove myself, but it was never enough." Her voice cracked, and in that moment, she wasn't my betrayer anymore. She was just human, broken, lost. She whispered, "I thought leaving you would make me happy, but I've never felt more alone." I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but my hands stayed still. Because even though my heart ached, I knew some bridges burn for a reason. Before she left, she asked quietly, "Can I come by sometime, just to talk?" I hesitated. then said, "If you do, read the note on the counter first." She frowned, confused. "What note?" "You'll know when you see it." That night I sat by the window, watching the reflection of the moon ripple over the quiet street. And for the first time since she left, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the man she broke. I felt whole, not because she was hurting, but because I had survived it, and something told me the story wasn't over yet. It was a Friday evening when she came back. Rain had started to fall, slow, steady drops that painted the window in trembling streaks. I was sitting at the table, reading the same page of a book I'd been pretending to understand for an hour, when I heard it. The sound of her car pulling into the driveway. My chest went still. 4 months of silence, and now she was here. The doorbell didn't ring right away. She stood there for a while. I could see her silhouette through the frosted glass. Small, hesitant, finally she knocked, softly. When I opened the door, she looked like a ghost of herself. Her hair was damp from the rain, her eyes red-rimmed. She clutched her purse to her chest like a shield. "Hi," she whispered. I didn't say it back, I just stepped aside. "Come in." The house was exactly as she left it, except quieter. She paused in the hallway, her gaze landing on the vase. The roses were gone now, replaced by dried stems and brittle petals that still held the faint memory of red. Her eyes softened when she saw the envelope beside it, the letter. She picked it up slowly. "This is what you meant." I nodded, yes. She hesitated, then said, "Can I read it?" "Go ahead." She sat down at the kitchen table, unfolding the paper like it was something sacred. I watched her eyes move across the words, watched her face change with every sentence. I had written that letter in the darkest hour of my heartbreak, when love and pain were one and the same. It said everything I never said out loud. How I'd loved her even when she drifted. How I'd noticed her silence before I knew what it meant. How I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I couldn't live my life chained to hate. And it ended with a single line. "I hope someday you find the version of yourself that I fell in love with. And if you ever come back, I hope it's because you miss the man who never stopped believing in you." When she finished reading, tears streamed down her face. Her shoulders shook as she pressed the letter to her chest. "Mark, I don't deserve this." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You're probably right." She looked up, guilt and longing tangled in her expression. "I don't even know where to start," she whispered. "After I left, I thought I'd found everything I was missing, but it was all hollow. Ethan made me feel wanted but not known. You." Her voice broke. "You knew me. Even when I didn't know myself." I stayed silent. Sometimes silence says more than words ever can. She continued, her voice trembling. "He used to say the things you never said. Compliment me, tell me I was beautiful, that I deserved more. And I believed him, because I needed to, but once he had me, it changed." I looked at her. "How?" She swallowed hard. "He became distant, cold, like he'd already won. And when I tried to talk about us, he said I was being dramatic, that I should just move on from you." Her lips quivered. "Then one night, I found out he was seeing someone else. Someone from his gym." Her eyes closed, and for a moment she looked like she might collapse. I went home that night and realized I'd traded something real for something shiny, and it broke me. I didn't rush to comfort her. Part of me wanted to, but another part, the part that had bled for months, stayed still. I just said quietly, "You didn't trade something shiny for something real, Emily. You traded truth for a story you wanted to believe." She wiped her face, trembling. "I know, and I can't take it back, but I need you to know I regret it every single day." We sat there in heavy silence for a long time. The rain outside turned into a soft whisper. Finally, she whispered, "Do you still love me?" It was a cruel question, not because of what it meant, but because I didn't know the answer anymore. After a pause, I said, "Part of me always will, the part that remembers who you were, but love doesn't mean trust, and without trust, it's just pain wearing a familiar face." She nodded slowly, tears falling again. "I don't expect you to take me back. I needed to see you, to tell you I'm sorry, and to thank you for that letter." Her voice cracked on the last word. "It saved me." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see the woman who betrayed me. I saw the woman I'd loved, flawed, fragile, human, and maybe that's what forgiveness really is, not erasing the pain, but accepting the person behind it. She asked softly, "Can I stay, just for tonight? I don't have anywhere else." I hesitated, my heart battled with itself. Logic screamed no, but love whispered something else. I finally said, "You can stay, but just for tonight." Her eyes widened, a mix of gratitude and heartbreak. She nodded, then whispered, "Thank you." That night she slept in the guest room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her quiet sobs through the wall. Every tear she cried echoed in the hollow places she'd left inside me. And in that strange, sleepless quiet, I realized something. Sometimes closure doesn't come from walking away. Sometimes it comes from staying just long enough to understand why you have to. At sunrise, the rain stopped. The light poured through the curtains, soft, golden, forgiving. I made coffee. She walked into the kitchen, eyes swollen, hair messy, wrapped in one of my old t-shirts. It almost looked like nothing had changed. Almost. She smiled weakly. "You still take your coffee black." I nodded. "Some things don't change." She looked at me for a long moment, then whispered, "I wish I hadn't." Before she left, she stood by the door, the same spot where she'd once told me she was leaving. Only this time there was no suitcase, just silence. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said softly. I met her eyes. "Take care of yourself, Emily." She nodded, tears gathering again. "I don't deserve your kindness." "Maybe not," I said quietly, "but I need it to remember who I am." And then she was gone, again, but this time it didn't feel like loss, it felt like release. The morning after she left for the second time felt different, not like the first time when the air was heavy and silence pressed against my chest until I could barely breathe. This time the silence felt light, clean. Like the house had finally exhaled, like I had too. I walked into the kitchen. The letter she'd read still sat on the table, folded neatly beside the vase. Only this time the vase was empty, no roses. No wilted reminders of what used to be, just clear glass and sunlight. For the first time in months, that emptiness didn't feel like loss. It felt like space for something new. I poured myself a cup of coffee. The same cup I used to share with her, now filled with something simpler, quieter. I sat by the window, watching the world outside wake up. The street was still wet from last night's rain. Neighbors were walking dogs, kids waited for buses. A couple jogged past laughing about something small and stupid. Life was moving. And I realized mine finally was too. Later that afternoon, I found a note under my door. It was from Emily, just one line: "Thank you for not hating me. I'll carry that forever." I stood there for a long moment, staring at the words. Then I folded the note and tucked it inside the same drawer where I'd kept our wedding photo. I didn't look at the photo, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. Forgiveness had already done what closure couldn't. Weeks passed. I redecorated the living room, painted it a shade of pale blue. Emily always hated that color, said it made her feel cold, but to me it felt peaceful, like the sky before dawn, like the start of something unspoken. I replaced our old couch with a smaller one, moved her side of the bed table to storage, and donated her clothes to a women's shelter downtown. The woman there asked if I was sure. I smiled and said, "Yes, someone else might need them more than I do." And I meant it. Riley, my dog, adjusted faster than I expected. He stopped waiting by the door every evening. Stopped pacing when he heard cars outside. Sometimes, I wondered if he understood better than I did that she wasn't coming back. One night, I sat on the porch again, the same porch where I'd once drowned in whiskey and questions. Only this time the glass beside me held water and peace. I thought about Emily, not in anger, not even in longing, just as a chapter, a story that shaped me, a story that hurt, healed, and taught me that love isn't always meant to last. Sometimes it's just meant to teach. She had been my beginning, yes, but she wasn't my end. And that realization, that simple truth, felt like freedom. A few months later, I ran into her again, at a grocery store of all places. She was in the produce aisle, holding a basket of apples. Her hair was shorter, her eyes clearer. When she saw me, she froze, then smiled, softly, carefully. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied. We stood there for a second that stretched like a lifetime. Then she said, "You look good." "So do you," I said, and it wasn't a lie. She did look good, not in the old way, not radiant or perfect, but real, worn, human, alive. We talked briefly, small things. The weather, work, no tears, no apologies, just two people who had finally outgrown the storm. Before she left, she said, "I hope you're happy, Mark." I smiled. "I am." She nodded, tears shimmering but unfallen. "Good, you deserve that." And then she walked away, slow, quiet steps between the aisles, fading like the end of a song you no longer need to replay. That night, I wrote again. Not a letter this time, just a note to myself. It said, "You can love someone and still let them go. You can forgive someone and still move on. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means remembering without pain." I folded it and placed it where her letter once was, beside the now empty vase. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to write for her. I wrote for me. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains. I stood by the window, watching the light settle on the table, on that vase, on that folded paper. Something about it felt poetic, like the story had finally told itself. I took a deep breath and smiled, because in the end, the roses were never really for her. They were for the man I had to become, the one strong enough to lose her and still love himself. Some love stories don't end in happily ever after, they end in peace. And sometimes that's even better. Ever after, they end in peace. And sometimes that's even better.